Before you can add something to faith, we had better know what faith is according to Jesus. Have you ever heard this phrase? Anytime anyone adds anything to faith as requirements for salvation, it is a false gospel. Now, I 100% believe it is by faith that we are saved, but I don't think everybody is defining faith in the same exact way. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go through the documentations in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John that document when Jesus defined somebody had faith. In Matthew 8, verses 5 through 10, and Luke 7, verses 2 through 10, are the documentations of the centurion who had a slave that he wanted Jesus to heal. Now, if you remember correctly, the centurion didn't even need Jesus to go where his slave was. He simply wanted him to speak it. And Jesus marveled at that, saying that even in Israel, he had not found such great faith. So faith is believing in the authority of Jesus. In Matthew 9, verse 2, Mark 2, verses 3 through 5, and Luke 5, verses 8 through 10, are the documentations about the four friends that carried their friend and dropped him through a roof of the building where Jesus was, just so he could heal their friend. It says Jesus saw their faith. He didn't hear their faith. He didn't feel their faith. He saw it in action. In Luke 7, verses 40 through 50, is a documentation of the woman who wet Jesus' feet with her tears and wiped him with her hair, and she didn't cease kissing them. Those actions led Jesus to say that her sins were forgiven, and he told the woman that her faith had saved her. Jesus defined her faith by what she did. If she didn't come, if she didn't do what she did, then no matter where she was at or what she had been thinking or what she had said outside of this encounter, Jesus would not have been able to say, your faith has saved you. Or how about Mark chapter 4, verses 37 through 41, and Luke 8, verses 22 through 25. This is where Jesus is asleep in the boat when a huge gale comes up and the disciples are terrified that they're going to die. So they wake him up so he can calm the storm. And he asked him, why are you afraid? He asked him, where is your faith? How did he know that they had no faith? Their actions proved it. In Matthew 9, verses 20 through 22, and Mark 5, verses 25 through 34, and Luke 8, verses 40 through 48, are the documentations of the woman who was suffering from a hemorrhage for 12 years. It says that she thought, if I just touch his garments, I will get well. So, despite the fact that she broke every law touching him, she was immediately healed. Jesus asks the question, who touched my garments? And she falls at his feet in fear, trembling because she knows what happened and she had experienced healing. Why? Because she believed that he could heal her. And it was her actions that made Jesus say, daughter, your faith has made you well. Now, if that woman had stayed on the side of the road, she would never have been healed. She couldn't have been healed. Why? Because she needed to do something in faith. In Matthew 9, verses 27 through 29, this is where two blind men were following Jesus, crying out, have mercy on us, son of David. And he asked him, do you believe that I am able to do this? And they said, yes. So when he touched their eyes, he said, it shall be done to you according to your faith. What was their faith in action? It was following him and crying out until he did something about it. There is no faith without action. If they had just stayed where they were and listened to him pass by, they would have proven that there was no belief in who he was, therefore no faith in what he could do. In Matthew 15, verses 21 through 28, and Mark 7, verses 24 through 30, we learn that of the Canaanite woman that cried out to Jesus, telling him that her daughter was cruelly demon-possessed. And despite the fact that she was not Jewish, she still asked. She still believed that if he would, he could. And when he talks about it not being good to take the children's bread and throwing it to the dogs, her reply was, yes, Lord, but even the dogs feed on the crumbs which fall from the master's table. And he said, O woman, your faith is great. It shall be done for you as you wish. And we know that the demon left her daughter and that she was healed at once. She believed in who Jesus was. And so in faith, she was relentless in seeking deliverance for her daughter. And she was okay that he considered her a dog feeding on the crumbs. And if she didn't believe in who he was, she would have stayed home. If she didn't have faith that Jesus could heal her daughter, she would never have asked. Or how about Matthew 21, verses 20 through 22, or Mark 11, 23 through 24? The disciples are passing by the fig tree that Jesus had cursed previously, and they ask, how did this happen? And he spoke of how we had to have faith in God to not doubt, and that what was done to the fig tree was not only possible, but they could speak to a mountain to move, and it would happen. You see, Jesus was teaching them that faith is about understanding our authority. In Mark 10, verses 46 through 52, and Luke 18, verses 35 through 43, this is when Jesus was approaching Jericho, and a blind man by the name of Bartimaeus was there, and he heard that Jesus was passing by, and he began to cry out, so much so that people kept telling him to shut up. But Jesus heard him, and he called him to him, and he got up and he came to Jesus, and Jesus asked him, what do you want me to do for you? And he simply said, I want to regain my sight. And Jesus said, go, your faith has made you well. And immediately he began to see, and he followed him. Now, what about Bartimaeus' healing is important? He didn't just sit on the side of the road. He didn't just simply say to himself, oh, there's Jesus, I believe in him. No, he cried out until he was heard. That was his step of faith, because he believed in who Jesus was, and he had faith to understand that if he could encounter Jesus, he would be healed. And he was. In Luke 17:19 is probably one of the most interesting documentation. Jesus encounters 10 leprous men who begged him to have mercy on him. And he saw them and he said, go and show yourselves to the priest. And it says, as they were going, they were cleansed. But then it says, one of them, when he saw he had been healed, turned back and he glorified God in a loud voice, and he fell on his face at Jesus' feet. And he wasn't even Jewish. He was a Samaritan. Jesus said, weren't there 10 of you? But only one has found to return. And Jesus said to him, stand up and go. Your faith has made you well. Now, what's interesting about this documentation is that all 10 were obedient and were going to the priest. And in their going, they were healed. But only one was defined as having had faith. Strong's 4102 pistis shows up 243 times in the New Testament, and we took 6 of the 8 in Matthew, we looked at all 5 in Mark, and we looked at 9 out of 10 from Luke, all of which were how Jesus defined faith. And I believe that every apostle and disciple defined faith the exact same way. My name is Cheryl Mickey. Keep with me, because we're going to keep diving into this topic, and we're going to look at the book of Acts. See you next one.